Further, in his cultivation of samadhi, which, as a result of his pointed concentration of mind, can no more be troubled by demons, if the practicer looks exhaustively into the origin of living beings and begins to differentiate between views when contemplating the continuous subtle disturbance in this clear state, he will fall into error because of the following four confused views about the undying heaven. 1. As he investigates the origin of transformation, he may call changing that which varies, unchanging that which continues, born that which is visible, annihilated that which is no more seen, increasing that which preserves its nature in the process of transformation, decreasing that whose nature is interrupted in the changing process, existing that which is created, and non-existent that which disappears. This is the result of his differentiation of the 8 states seen as he contemplates the manifestations of the 4th aggregate. If seekers of the truth call on him for instruction, he will declare, "I now both live and die, both exist and do not, both increase and decrease," thus talking wildly to mislead them. 2. As the practicer looks exhaustively into his mind, he finds that each thought ceases to exist in a flash and concludes that they are non-existent. If people ask for instruction, his answer consists of the one word, "nothing," beyond which he says nothing else. 3. As the practicer looks exhaustively into his mind, he sees the rise of his thoughts and concludes that they exist. If people ask for instruction, his answer consists of the one word, "something," beyond which he says nothing else. And 4. The practicer sees both existence and non-existence and finds that such states are so complicated that they confuse him. If people ask for instruction, he will say, "The existing comprises the non-existent, but the non-existent does not comprise the existing," in such a perfunctory manner as to prevent exhaustive inquiries. By so discriminating, he causes confusion, and so falls into heresy, which screens his Bodhi nature. The above pertains to the 5th state of heterodox discrimination, or samskara, which postulates confused views about the undying. Further, in his cultivation of samadhi, which, as a result of his pointed concentration of mind, can no more be troubled by demons, if the practicer looks exhaustively into the origin of living beings and begins to differentiate as he contemplates the endless flow of the 4th aggregate, he will fall into error because of his wrong view of the continued existence of form after death arising from his upset mind. So he clings firmly to his body and believes that form is ego. He sees that his mind embraces all countries everywhere and believes that form is within ego. He sees that form is now restored to follow his ego and believes that ego exists apart from form. And he sees that his ego continues to exist in the flow of samskara and believes that it is within form. These are the 4 kinds of discrimination arising from the belief that form continues to exist after death. Thus, there are 16 kinds of such discrimination due to wrong contemplation of the first 4 aggregates, rupa, vedana, sanjna, and samskara. From then on, the practicer discriminates between fundamental troubles, or klesha, and fundamental bodhi as existing side by side without contradicting each other. For this wrong view that form continues after death, he will fall into heresy that screens his bodhi nature. The above pertains to the 6th state of heterodox discrimination, or samskara, which postulates the wrong view that form exists after death. Further, in his cultivation of samadhi, which, as a result of his pointed concentration of mind, can no more be troubled by demons, If the practicer looks into the origin of living beings and begins to differentiate as he contemplates the fourth aggregate, or samskara, which will vanish in the same way as the first three, namely Rupa, Vedana, and Sanjna, did before, he will fall into error because of his wrong view of the non-existence of form after death arising from his upset mind. He saw that form was causeless when Rupa vanished, that his mind was free from bondage when Sanjna ended, and that all links were broken when Vedana stopped. He now concludes that once the aggregates are no more, life deprived of Vedana and Sanjna is like grass and plants. Even Rupa does not exist in life. How can there be form after death? So his investigation reveals the non-existence of form after death, with the ensuing eightfold absence of form. Hence his belief that nirvana has neither cause nor effect, and that all things are void, have only empty names, and are fundamentally subject to annihilation. For this wrong view of annihilation after death, he falls into heresy that screens his Bodhi nature. This is the seventh state of heterodox discrimination, or samskara, which postulates the wrong view of annihilation. Further, in his cultivation of samadhi, which, as a result of his pointed concentration of mind, can no more be troubled by demons, if the practicer looks into the origin of living beings and begins to differentiate as he contemplates the fourth aggregate, which now manifests, whereas Rupa, Vedana, and Sanjna have vanished, he will fall into error because of the wrong dual view of existence and non-existence, which is self-contradictory, and which implies the negation of both after death. Thus, Rupa, Vedana, and Sanjna, previously seen to exist, now do not. If samskara, which now manifests, is likewise not to exist, it is, in fact, not non-existent. If these four aggregates are likewise looked into, the conclusion is the eightfold negative view of form in life and after death. Thus, each of them, when investigated, can be said to be neither existing nor non-existent after death. Further, since the fourth aggregate is always changing, he reasons that both its existence and non-existence are invalid, for it is neither real nor unreal in life, so he infers that nothing can be said of it in the dark and obscure condition after death. For holding the above views, he will fall into heresy that screens his Bodhi nature. They pertain to the eighth state of heterodox discrimination, or samskara, which postulates the invalidity of both the existence and non-existence of the five aggregates after death. Further, in his cultivation of samadhi, which, as a result of his pointed concentration of mind, can no more be troubled by demons, if the practicer looks into the origin of living beings to discriminate as he contemplates the fourth aggregate, which is subject to annihilation after its rise and fall in every flash of thought, he will fall into error because of his wrong conception of either one of the seven states where body, desire, suffering, joy, and indifference are destroyed, and where nothing exists after their annihilation, which is final. For this wrong view of annihilation after death, he will fall into heresy, which screens his Bodhi nature. This is the ninth state of heterodox discrimination, which arises from the upset mind, and which postulates the annihilation of the five aggregates after the present life. Further, in his cultivation of samadhi, which, as a result of his pointed concentration of mind, can be no more troubled by demons, if the practicer looks into the origin of living beings and begins to differentiate as he contemplates the fourth aggregate, which will recur after its annihilation after death, he will fall into error because of his misconception of the five false conditions of nirvana. In his contemplation of the condition of perfect clearness, which now manifests, he is tempted to transmute into nirvana either A. the heaven of desire, because of his delight in that condition; B. the first dhyana heaven, because it is free from trouble and anxiety; C. the second dhyana heaven, because it is free from suffering; D. the third dhyana heaven, because it is full of joy; or E, the fourth dhyana heaven, which is free from both suffering and joy, and is beyond birth and death in samsara. Thus he will mistake samsaric heavens for the fundamental wu-wei state, and cling to one of these 5 states as an ultimate abode, offering peace and security. Because of this differentiation, he will fall into heresy, which will screen his Bodhi nature. This is the 10th state of heterodox discrimination, or samskara, which postulates 5 conditions of nirvana arising from the 5 aggregates. Ananda, these 10 kinds of wild interpretation of dhyana come from the intermingling of the 4th aggregate of discrimination with meditative mind. Deluded and wayward practitioners who do not know their own capabilities cannot distinguish these states when they manifest, and wrongly declare that they have attained the holy rank. By so doing, they will break the rule against lying, and so fall into the unintermittent hells. After my nirvana, in the Dharma ending age, you should proclaim this teaching, so that living beings will awaken to it, that the demons of their minds will not lead them to self-inflicted calamities, and that all practicers can be on their guard and wipe out heterodox views. You should teach them how to discipline their bodies and minds, so that they awaken to reality and avoid straying from the supreme path, and to refrain from wishful thinking and from mistaking some little progress for complete realization. You should act as their guide to supreme enlightenment.